To ground today's discussion in data and analysis, we now turn to our Economic Outlook Report, which provides an insight in the trends and shaping of our regional and cross-border economy. We are pleased to be joined by Dr. Daniel Covarrubias, Director of the Texas Center for Border Economic and Enterprise Development at Texas A&M International University. Dr. Covarrubias leads an applied research supporting both public and private sector decision makers, with a strong focus on border and binational economic development, trade, logistics, and innovation. Through the Texas Center and its Logistics Living Lab, his work has helped advance competitiveness in cross-border and trade transportation by exploring how emerging technologies can improve supply chains and regional growth. He is a recognized voice on cross-border trade, logistics, and innovation, serving on a national and binational advisory groups and regularly contributing to the regional and national media. Please join me in welcome Dr. Daniel Covarrubias as he presents the Economic Outlook Report.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you to the Laredo Chamber. Thank you, Monica. Thank you to the board for having me here. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. Full house. We've been doing this Economic Outlook Report now for several years. I mean, the Texas Center has been around there at the Sanchez Business School at TAMIU since 1989, and it's been a partnership. It's been an ongoing partnership. Earlier when Mr. Urrabazo was saying there about how the Vision Conference started and things like that, one of the partnerships was the Texas Center producing this Economic Outlook Report. For several years, it stopped doing that, and we're back at it. This is the third year now that we're producing it for the Chamber, and it's a pleasure to be with you all here and to produce this analysis. Again, my name is Daniel Covarrubias, and today we're gonna go over three key subjects on the report. By the way, the report, you all have it in your bag, the bag that you were gifted when you came in here. The report's in there, so be sure to take a look at it. So we're gonna speak about where we stand, what's at stake, and where do we go from here? I mean, we've heard some very, very interesting panels. A lot of information has been said. And we're gonna go a little deeper into things that were talked about here in these panels. So let's start with the trade outlook, which is one of the sections of the report. This is the top 5 U.S. ports of entry. And for the last 2 years, we've been saying very, very proudly that the Port of Laredo is the top port of entry in the world, in the Western Hemisphere, and in the United States, right? Well, that changed. That changed this past year. Right now, we have here data from, we're comparing a year. We don't have the data till December 25. We have data here till October 25, so we got it from November 24 to October 25 to get a year worth of data there. And we had a switch there. We got Chicago O'Hare Airport taking the #1 spot, JFK International Airport in New York the second one, and Laredo is the third place, right? And I mean, we feel that this is going to stay like that. We still need numbers from December, but we don't feel that anything's going to change there. But very important is that Laredo remains the top land port of entry. Laredo remains with that distinction, and you can ask, well, what happened? Well, Chicago and New York, I mean, going into the data, we saw a big spike of tariff front loading. We saw a lot of this that Chicago and New York did was that they had a big month of March. And that's when the tariffs started, right? The March 4th was when tariffs were announced, and they had a lot of tariff front loading, and that's what gave them this spike to be able to take. And another thing that Chicago and New York did is that they're betting on pharmaceuticals. They both just recently inaugurated big terminals on pharmaceuticals, and that's what's driving the trade there in those two ports of entry. But Laredo's solid. I mean, still over LA and Long Beach and so on. We know that LA and Long Beach took a big hit because of the China tariffs and container. I mean, they dropped half of their container shipments were dropped from the port of LA and so on. Continuing on this trade outlook, let's take a look at the share of total U.S. trade. Again, these are numbers from November 24 to October 25. And what do we see here? Well, Laredo handled $341 billion in trade through October 2025. 40%, again, that's a number we've been seeing for years now. I mean, and it's stayed a pretty steady number. 40% of all U.S.-Mexico trade and 22% of all USMCA trade is handled through the Port of Laredo. And when I say the Port of Laredo, we say the two bridges, right? World Trade Bridge and the Colombia Solidarity Bridge. No other land port of entry comes close to those numbers. That's roughly $1.1 billion crossing the bridges, these two bridges every day. I mean, that's a lot of money. I mean, just standing here, you can say that $50,000 just crossed through the World Trade Bridge and so on. So it's a lot of money that's being handled here in the Port of Laredo. How do these commodities or how do these imports and exports cross? Well, I think right now in the infrastructure panel, we all know it, right? Everybody that's here in this room knows that trucks are a big part of our city, right? So 1 in 4 commercial trucks crossing any U.S. border port crosses at Laredo. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I mean, it's 23%, almost 25%. So obviously Laredo is the #1 port of entry. Again, in truck crossing and commercial truck crossings, that's 2.96 million trucks coming northbound. Again, for north and southbound, it's going to be over again this year, 6 million trucks that cross through the port of Laredo. Rail adds another 480,000 containers. That's about another $50 billion in trade. So Laredo moves over $310 billion in surface freight annually, right? So that's a big number in what Laredo handles, and we'll see in another slide right now of how that trend has been going up, which is this one. This is the Laredo port of entry, its trade trend, right? I mean, how total trade, imports and exports, how they've been handled here through the port in this past year. Trade grew from $25 billion a month in January 2024 to $31 billion a month by October 2025. That's a 24% increase despite tariff uncertainty. I mean, we've been talking about tariffs for a while now and the uncertainty that they're creating, and we all were waiting to see on the impacts that these tariffs had in the Port of Laredo. Well, I mean, trade has been keeping that upward trend here at the port. I mean, and you might ask yourself why, and it's because USMCA goods are still exempt. So anything that complies with USMCA principles of what's included in the production and so on, rules of origin and so on, they're still exempt from any tariffs, right? So that's what's keeping Laredo being able to manage these trade numbers. You can see peaks and valleys there, and these peaks and valleys, particularly for this year, they track tariff cycles. So what does that mean? You can see there in March, just as I said right now that in March, JFK and Chicago O'Hare peaked, we had a peak here in March as well. 31.4 billion before the March 4th deadline. So again, companies were front loading their shipments, right? That's when tariffs began. I mean, nobody had any idea that they were going to go on 30-day pauses or 90 days analysis and things like that. So that was the first tariff that was announced, and that's when we had those peaks. We had it again, we had it in April that it dropped after the tariffs hit, after the stock market took some hits there as well. But then in October, it spiked again as companies again front-loaded, thinking that tariffs were going to be escalated and so on. So this particular year, trade here through the Port of Laredo ebbs and flows according to the tariffs announcements that were done by President Trump's administration. This is total world imports. 85% of Laredo trade, like we said right now, moves by truck, 13% by rail, and under 2% by air. So, well, we do have intermodal capacity, which right now in the economic development panel, it's something good for the city. It's something good that the city offers, that you can move freight here, any of these three modes, right? Truck, train, or air. And the top categories, I mean, these rarely change. It's still machinery, it's still vehicles, electrical equipment. Those are staples. I mean, if you go back to past reports, you'll be able to see that these categories are the same. Mainly it's auto parts going into Mexico, finished vehicles coming into the United States. And those auto parts, which is one of the main components that cross through here, one of the main commodities, you see them cross 7 to 8 times before a vehicle is finished. I mean, and that's the power of the North American supply chains, and that's the power of having an integrated economy and what it can produce. Logistics facilities, this is a big one. Unfortunately, for this one, we weren't able to close the year and get year-end data for 2025. I mean, I'm sure it's going to keep on this trend, but we have data here till December of 2024. So warehouse investments hit $470 million in 2024 with 86 permits. That was the highest on record. I assure you that when we look at 2025 data, I think that record's gonna be broken once again. In the last 3 years, Laredo has seen over $1 billion in warehouse investment, more than the previous 15 years combined. I mean, and everybody that's in this room has seen what that boom looks like, right? I mean, you look at the industrial parks, you look at to where Laredo's growing, you go down 35 to San Antonio and you see this development elsewhere, you go down Mines Road. So yes, I mean, and there are the numbers, right? I mean, development in Laredo has boomed. Like I say, for 2025, I expect that the numbers continue to grow. Let's see what 2026 brings, right? Bridges outlook, this is another section that we have in the report where we analyze the numbers for the international bridges. These are pedestrian crossings. Pedestrian crossings reached 5.5 million crossings through November 2025. That's about 15,000 people that crossed the pedestrian bridge, which is bridge number 1. But that's still 22% below the 2019 peak of 7.1 million. Pedestrian traffic is the only crossing category that hasn't fully recovered from its pre-COVID numbers, and I mean, that's a question worth asking, right? I mean, I don't have the answer. We still haven't figured it out. I mean, it could be that there's less retail spaces in downtown. I mean, I know that's going to be a conversation of other panels. It could be that there's more people crossing by passenger vehicles. It can be that those people are not crossing anymore. Again, I don't have the answer for it, but it is something that it's worth monitoring because it's the only crossing category that has not come up to pre-pandemic levels. Passenger vehicles, on the other hand, you'll see it that it's back at that pre-pandemic level, and it's back at that upward trajectory. Passenger vehicles crossings reached 12.9 million in 2024. Right now, as of November of 2025, they're at 12.4 million, so they're going to reach that 12.9 million, maybe a little over. That's about 35,200 vehicles that cross a day. That's, again, northbound and southbound. That's including both ways. But through our bridges here in Laredo, passenger vehicles, you all know, cross through bridge number 1, bridge number 2, Colombia Bridge. That's upwards of 35,000 vehicles a day. Again, unlike pedestrian traffic, passenger vehicles has recuperated to pre-pandemic levels. Commercial truck crossings, that's another one that's its upward trend is that one didn't even get hit by the pandemic, as you can clearly see. I mean, that's been an upward trend that's been sustained. Through November 2025, commercial trucks are crossing at nearly almost 20,000 trucks a day. I mean, everybody in this room that speaks on this and that says that 20,000 number, I mean, it's true. Again, we're taking into consideration World Trade Bridge and Colombia. Between both bridges, we have 19,800 trucks per day that are crossing on average. About 825 truck crossings per hour during operation hours. And that pace mirrors 2024's record of 6.1 million crossings, which is up 54% than a decade ago. Right now that they were talking about the need for infrastructure, the need for keeping up with development and keeping up with these trucks. I mean, you see in 10 years, it's grown more than 54%. And I mean, and the trend is that it's gonna keep on growing. This year, at November, we're at 5.7 million crossings. We're gonna surpass the 6.1 million of last year as well. That's a lot of trucks. I mean, 20,000 trucks a day, it's quite remarkable. Northbound rail crossings, the same. Well, this one has had a slight dip. We saw that in 2023, there were 4.4 thousand rail crossings. These are containers that are crossing through the rail bridge. So it's remained slightly flat. Another thing to still consider and look at what is moving rail and why is that stagnated for the past three years. So that's the data, right? I mean, that's how the port is, and the port is in a pretty strong position. Again, I said, I mean, we won't be able to go out there and say that we're still the #1 port in the nation, but I mean, #3 is still a pretty solid position, #1 land port of entry, and so on. But what's at stake? I mean, our position is strong. But a policy debate in Washington, I mean, we've all seen with tariffs and things like that and taking it further or escalating, it can hit us, right? I mean, and primarily because this city or this region, I mean, it lives and breathes on international trade, right? So we have to be on the lookout of what's coming and what's at stake here. So the main thing, and that's the focus of the article that's in the Economic Outlook report of this year, and it's, should we go with 1 rule book or 3 rule books? And what am I talking about? Well, there's been a lot of talk in Washington, more of it recently, if USMCA, which is the US-Mexico-Canada trade agreement, it should be renegotiated, or if it should be split up and done into bilateral deals, right? Bilateral deals between Mexico and the United States and between Canada and the United States. I mean, I tried to paint it here as clearly as I could. We have a really good framework. We have a trilateral framework that permits North America to keep on moving, right? It permits North America to be one of the largest economic blocs in the world. North America, Canada, the United States, and Mexico produces 30% of the world's GDP. I mean, that's a pretty big number. And it's worked because of the North American Free Trade Agreement and now the USMCA. So you can go from having 1 compliance system to 3 separate rule sets, right, that have to be followed. For any custom brokers here in the room, I mean, you know what NYMER that is, trying to be able to comply with 3 different rule sets, right? So the compliance reality, a single component using Canadian aluminum, 3 district Mexican manufacturing and American assembly would need to satisfy 3 distinct origin rules, each with distinct thresholds and certification requirements. I mean, it can get messy really quickly. Just again, because of how integrated North America really is. And it is because of that USMCA. Now, there's also what I called there in the report, the Mexico-Canada problem. Yes, for the US, it might sound good to say, well, we'll go with 2 bilateral deals. We'll sit down with Mexico and we'll have power over them, and again, sit down with Canada, have power over them, negotiate. But what happens with Mexico and Canada? That's a whole other agreement that has to be negotiated, right? And it's not a small thing. $56 billion in annual Mexico-Canada trade would be left on the table there if just the U.S. negotiates with Mexico and the U.S. negotiates with Canada, right? And that includes $21 billion in vehicles and $9 billion in electronics. And those are supply chains that are already set up to run through the 3 countries. Now, there's a timeline risk. For everybody here in the room that has seen how NAFTA was negotiated, how the USMCA was negotiated, I mean, it takes forever to do these deals. I mean, one could wish that the governments could sit at a table and negotiate and in a week do a trade deal, but it unfortunately doesn't take a week, right? The USMCA took 3 years to negotiate. So taking that timeline into bilateral deals where you're gonna have all this compliance realities and you're gonna have to figure out what Mexico is going to be able to do with Canada and how that's going to affect the Canada-U.S. agreement or the Mexico-U.S. agreement and so on. I mean, I put there 9 years, but I mean, it's not a fact. We don't know how long it'll take, but it's a possibility. I mean, these agreements can take very long to be able to negotiate. And while North America debates on what it's going to do and what route it should take, well, China is moving. I mean, and that was the whole premise for getting the original North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. It was to deal with the pressures from Asia and to be able to solidify an economic bloc that could compete against Asia. So what's going on with China? Well, Chinese exports to Latin America reached a record $287 billion in 2024, up 13% year over year. So yes, China's moving into the spots that North America is leaving because of trying to renegotiate this trade agreement. There's a big one there, 55% in electric vehicle growth between 2024 and 2025. So yes, we know that China is pushing electric vehicles and it's trying to get them into North America, and it's doing a really good job in Latin America, even in Mexico, without having an automotive industrial plant, an automotive assembly plant in Mexico. 50% of new vehicle sales last year in Mexico were Chinese electric vehicles. So that's pretty close to home. So again, that's something else to keep on the radar. And we have to keep in mind what the trilateral relationship between Mexico, the United States, and Canada was able to build. So since USMCA entered force, 37% trade growth between the 3 countries, 136% investment surge, 12+ million American jobs. We did a report there at the Texas Center where we identified 9.9 million jobs in the top 15 states of Mexico, provinces in Canada, and states in the United States that were exposed to all these tariff uncertainties. So that's a lot of jobs that are there. So let's start closing. Where do we go? What do we do, right? Well, we have a perfect opportunity, which is the 2026 USMCA review. The USMCA is actually under review right now. It started late last year, and it's going to go till the 1st of July, where the 3 countries have to make a decision on whether they're going to extend the USMCA on a year-on, year-off basis. They're going to extend it for 16 more years, or they're going to go the bilateral route, right? So what can we do for this, or what do we suggest? Well, we got to the propositive tone, right? And we put together a framework within TAMIU. We worked on a framework that is a three-part framework on what we propose that USMCA 2.0 can look like. The first part of it is the Binational Customs Agency. And the Binational Customs Agency, it's a study that I put together with ex-ambassador to the Mexican ambassador to the United States, Jerónimo Gutiérrez, where we envision what a joint CBP and a NAM agency could look like, right? Based on frameworks that exist right now, like the International Water Boundary Commission, like the Nat Bank, and so on, but to make trade more streamlined, to have, I mean, joint inspections already exist between the U.S. and Mexico. World Trade Bridge does them. But the systems still don't talk to each other. We have a digital wall between Mexico and the United States where their systems are not interconnected. This could take care of that. The other one is the North American Industrial Coordination Council. This one I co-wrote. My co-author just left a couple of minutes ago, Jerry Schwebel, that you all know. We co-wrote this, and the idea behind this is to have an industrial policy for the whole of North America, to have North America compete as a whole and not have industrial policies for the United States, for Mexico, and Canada. To take advantage of Mexico's manufacturing power, to take advantage of the United States' technological development and smart manufacturing and so on, and to also take advantage of Canada's natural resources, which none of the other two countries have. And finally, the third part of this framework is the North American Digital Coordination Initiative. And this basically talks about AI. I mean, AI is a technology that's changing our lives, that's changing the world. And we all know that the US is in an arms race with China on who's gonna dominate AI. And everybody here in this room wants the US to win. But what we argue in this paper that cannot happen is that the US gets to that finish line, turns around, and Mexico and Canada, its two partners, are way back there. They have to come together. They have to have an initiative for North America, because if not, it's going to be a national security issue for the United States. So, concluding, what are we saying? Modernize, don't fragment. We have 4 pillars there for USMCA 2.0, which are AI governance, digital trade, critical minerals, and supply chain security. And from where we sit here, in Laredo, we know that close to 20,000 daily truck crossings represent the physical manifestation of this trilateral integration. The operational case is clear. The frameworks are there. They're ready. They exist, so the 2026 USMCA review doesn't have to start from scratch. You all can have access to all this research. You all can have access to all these documents. There's a QR code there. Feel free to scan it. Everything's on our website. There's my contact information. Again, thank you so much. The report is in your bag. Everybody has a goodie bag. The report is in there. Do we have time for one question? Oh, Andrew, you got it. This is going to be a short one, right?
A short one. Daniel, I love your presentations. Every year I become a parrot and I recite your data ad nauseum, hopefully with less screeching, although some people would argue against that. Let me ask a question about how Canada fits into this. Whether we call it USMCA, CUSMA, TMEC, Canada is an important partner of the United States. However, with Mexico, they have quite a bit of growth to go in there. Their greatest export to Mexico is grains. If TMEC, CUSMA, USMCA falls apart and the administration at the White House level gets what it wants and not the Department of Commerce, ITA, or USTR, what does that effect look like in Laredo in regards to Canadian trade coming through our port? Not necessarily the 0.5% that does come through here as Canadian import-exports, but rather the impact on Canadian trade in the United States into Mexico.
I told you it was going to be a short one, right? And an easy one. Andrew always comes with the easy questions. I mean, I think the first impact, Andrew, again, it's going to be a compliance mess. I mean, and I think U.S. custom brokers are feeling it right now because of how they're having to deal with tariffs. And if tariffs stack on top of each other, and then if they get it wrong, they're going to have to pay the money that's owed there. They're all waiting on what the U.S. Supreme Court is gonna rule on the YEPA tariffs. If that money is going to be handed back, that's also going to be a compliance nightmare, right? So what we're trying to say is push away from those compliance nightmares and leave an integrated trilateral solution. Is USMCA perfect? No, it's not. I know, and there's a lot that can be built on, and that's why we have the proposals for it. Now, what would Laredo feel? But it would feel the compliance. I mean, it would feel Where are those rules of origin going to sit? Is the agreement between Mexico and Canada going to be set at the same time that the U.S.-Mexico and the U.S.-Canada agreements are going to be set? I mean, I don't know. I think it's going to add a lot of bureaucracy. It's going to add a lot of uncertainty. And right now, what's driving down business and what's driving down investments, it's not so much the tariffs, but the uncertainty. So I think that uncertainty would grow. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.